Today, I want us to talk a little bit about an issue that I see plaguing a lot of people in terms of coming to Christianity or understanding as a whole what the Christian drive is. A lot of people will come to be a Christian, and through that experience, they're transformed. They become a totally different person, and they have a lot of drive, and they get really caught up in what they're doing, which is becoming more Christ-like, which is realistically the goal, right? And while this is the goal, and this is a large part of what it is to be a Christian, the outlook that people have towards the world can oftentimes change. Whereas previously people were dominated by hedonistic tendencies such as their own lust and their own desires, now they're kind of caught up in this sensationalism of waiting until Jesus comes for the second time. They're just hoping that will save them and fix everything. That's fine. We look forward to his coming. But it's a problem in the eschatology of individuals where the mainline Christian understanding of the end times is these days that everything's going to get worse and worse until the events of the apocalypse start to happen, and it's going to get worse from there, and then eventually things are going to, Christ will come at the last moment and rescue his church. But this isn't what the Bible teaches. The Bible teaches that the church has victory through Christ over all the evils of this world. The church is not the church that is waiting to be rescued. We're the church that is conquering, and more than conquerors, in that what we convert is not simply the normal conquest of people would understand. So recognize that the Doomer pill begins with the outlook on life and hinges on a couple different factors. It hinges firstly on the presupposition of cyclical history. And that's the idea that things get good for a while, then things get bad, then things get good for a while, then things get bad, and these cycles in history repeat. I can tell you right now that's a lie. That's not how history works. And then you're going to point to the history books. We're going to have a very long discourse. This content is not for people who are not informed on my understanding of history. If you're not, then you should watch some other videos. There's hours and hours talking about how what you see in the news and in the media and what you're told through movies and TV shows is not how the world really works. So then the conclusion is that the world is not cyclical, it's progressive. That is, that we go from one place to another place. Well, we're always battling against sin, and Satan always has the same goals, the same tricks. Things that worked in the past don't work as well now because we've fought those battles, win, and we go forth equipped with the knowledge. Well, the enemy would continually seek for us to forget the lessons of the past. He can't fully erase the fact that these things have been dealt with and these things have been addressed. So we live in a time, in an age where most of the issues that we would previously look at in the church have been addressed by scholarly men who have a good understanding. And so we don't necessarily worry about that. And in that way, the warfare changes. New age, and there's new warfare. When I say new age, I simply mean that we progress to different battlefields at different time periods. So the understanding of this, that history is linear, also drives us to the understanding that we are progressively moving closer and closer to Christian values. And people will love to small-mindedly object, so the whole world would be Christian? The whole world will not be Christian per se, but the Christian values will permeate every sphere. This is the end goal of the Christian. So when people end up listless and without any favorable winds, it's because they don't actually have a directive. They don't have a goal they're shooting for as a Christian, other than personal reform, victory over sin in their own lives, which are valid battlefields, valid things to pursue. You want to become more Christ-like. But in addition to this, there's a long-lasting effect that we have that we leave to our children and to our grandchildren, and it's how we handle the world at large, how we present ourselves, what things we accept and which things we reject. One of the ways to understand this is in the last 70 years, everyone has just operated under the assumption that if you build something nice and leave it to your children, invariably they'll ruin it. They'll just destroy it. And because this mentality has been prevalent, That's the way people have lived their lives, not trusting their children, not pursuing a dynamic relationship which would ensure that they have something left over when you're gone. We can look at boomers, Gen X, Gen Z, millennials. All of them behave in this overarching way of me, I'm going to consume what I produce throughout my life and leave nothing for anyone else. And if I do leave something very much at all, it's going to be so little that it's inconsequential. The reason being, of course, that you don't just want to hand things to your kids. You don't want to make things too easy for your children, because that will corrupt them and make them reprobates, make them, bad people, and they'll ruin society. But what we see, the reverse is true. When great men have children, those children go on to improve society as a whole, even if they're not as what we might call great as their fathers. They're operating under the assumptions that the base morality of Christianity must be upheld. And so in this way, we seek to become so Christian, as it were, and to benefit each other so much by this Christian nature that other people would seek to, even if they don't actually believe and are not converted, they seek to interact with our culture in a prevalent and positive way. And this makes the Christians the arbiters. We're told that we will judge angels. If we can't even judge the disputes between ourselves, how are we supposed to ever attain to that level where we're ready to judge the angels? Of course, that is in a way hyperbole, but it is factual. We will judge angels. The hyperbole comes in the comparison between our pre-glorification selves and our post-glorification. That's where the hyperbole comes in. Nothing you can do will stop God's plan. If God's plan is for you to judge angels, it will happen. But we should look at our time on earth in a way as a taskmaster. We should be preparing for this by studying God's law. As I said previously, if we're not going to adhere to the standard that God has set out for what morality looks like and for what the civil order should be, then we're completely without any hope to devise some sort of heavenly standard when we get there. So in this, we seek as Christians to promote a society which operates on Christian values. And in doing so, even the non-Christian is brought in and they operate on those same values. And this is one of the ways in which the church conquers the world. And when Christ returns, we present it to him. The idea that you're just waiting around to die so you can go be with God in heaven is a little silly. Well, certainly there is some relief in death in the sense that our temporal bodies will doubtlessly fall away. We should strive to be in this place as long as possible. Our goal being to win over as much of this world to Christ as we can. And likewise, we should be trying to leave something for our children, setting the way so they have something to look after as well. So the doomer mindset of everything is destroyed and I'm just going to get what I can and then get out of here, so to speak, is prevalent even in the church today amongst dispensationalists and other eschatology that is, in my opinion, flawed or anti-biblical. These people will do absolutely nothing to prepare in any way for the future, while at the same time consuming all the resources that are given to them to perpetuate the ever now. We want to avoid this. I'm going to strive to be more like Christ. Christ also seeks to leave a great inheritance. We are his children, and he leaves us a wonderful inheritance. So if you want to be Christ-like, you should also in this way strive to be like him and leave your children a good inheritance. The inheritance that I'm talking about is not just financial. While it's true financial inheritance can be helpful, homes are especially difficult to obtain right now without some sort of financial fall-through. However, we also look at the society we live in. And if your goal is to retract from society, to disengage from society so that you can simply live by yourself and not do anything, you are dooming your children to have to deal with that problem. Instead, you should face these issues head on, set the standard, establish that you won't tolerate amongst your individuals that are in your groups the kind of debauchery and reprobate actions that the rest of the world accepts. In time, this will cause people who are of a similar mindset to be drawn to you, and in that there is strength. There's no strength in compromising your values so that you can socialize with people who are reprobates. Don't do it. Don't involve yourself with those people. You withdraw from those people only because they withdraw from you. What I mean by that is, as you set standards for yourself, you become a wet blanket or a killjoy, and those people naturally extricate themselves from your life until such a time as they find that they want the benefits that you have accrued through this way of living. Then they return. And when they return, They are in the process of a verification now. And this has happened multiple times throughout my life, watching the way that my family has ordered themselves. People will leave and then come back, and they will want to re-enjoin, if you will, themselves to our social circles. And in doing so, they purify themselves, even if they're not dedicated believers, even if they're not people who are going to call themselves Christians. They adhere to the Christian morals because they are the most superior. Coming from God, there is no higher calling in terms of how you should live your life and the way you should order your society. Your civil law is based entirely off the mind of God, not off the mind of random men. And this is the key. If you want to leave a good inheritance so your children don't have to struggle against a world that hates them and continually pushes the boundaries as far as they can go, then draw those boundaries inward. Set them yourself. Ensure that everyone you're socializing with or interacting with is likewise going to have to uphold these standards. This may sound very overbearing, but that's because I am talking about it from the perspective that I am in, which is fourth generation in this aspect. Many people have to start from scratch. They don't have friend groups and they don't have things. My knowledge, my education, and much of the work that was put into me was put in with the expectation that I would perpetuate the things that have already been set in motion. There is a very real expectation of me to lead and direct my family in the way that this family has been directed in for years prior, with the same outcome, that we would purify and that we would take over these areas. We would take over our township, we take over our state, and so on and so forth, not in some vast political scheme where I seek to impose myself in the current political sphere, but rather in a position whereat we subvert and destroy those political entities simply by not paying attention to them and by setting a standard, not one that is legislated by the law of the state or the country you live in, but is legislated by the very nature of your expectation for people around you. I've talked previously in another video how social justice is a misunderstood term, and people don't understand it, and it's pretty much exclusively a negative. This is because it's intentional. Social justice works in a variety of different ways, as long as what you're attaining is actual justice. Social injustice, on the other hand, is completely irrelevant. If you don't understand what I mean by that, then there's a lot of other things you should watch, a lot of other videos you could be looking at, or you need to find someone around you who has this information. Not because I wouldn't share it, but because the sharing of it does require 8 to 10 hours of introduction, and then many, many more hours of explanation and observation throughout the world around you. Well, you can get some of this from online. I do encourage you to understand for yourself what the words actually mean, and then use your own observation to see what we're talking about. Back on the topic of the doomer. The people who are Christians, but they feel listless, like there's nothing going on, or they're expecting persecution, or they're just waiting for the end to start. And because things look terrible, it must be soon. And so they don't do anything to prepare for this. No long-term investing. And when I say long-term investing, you should understand the longest term investment you're going to make is in your own children. And so that is key. They don't do this long-term investing. They don't do any kind of preparation for the future because they're so caught up in all the bad things that are happening. That's because you live in a fake world where the screens tell you what reality is. But if you simply look around you and see what is around you, you'll notice it's not true. What is shown on the screen, whether it's a TV show or a movie or mainstream media, it actually doesn't check out. It doesn't compute with what you actually are seeing in the world around you. So shut it all off, pay attention to what's going on, and you'll see the truth a lot faster than you think you would. Now, all that being said, the doomer problem is that they become inactive. This is what everyone does when they're only expecting bad things. They just sit with their hands folded, sort of like this, and they accomplish nothing. However, once you realize that your mission is to go forth to set standards, to instruct, and to show the world the way in which they're supposed to live, chiefly through example, but also through education, then you have a mission. You have things you're trying to do. And understand that it begins most often with Christians, not with non-Christians, because Christ has conquered so many hearts. He has done the work of bringing people to faith. The goal that we only have now is to help them to understand the scriptures. And the only way we can do that is through washing of the word, teaching, instruction. And this way people can understand how they're supposed to live. Not simply that they are supposed to conform to Christ, but what that means, what it looks like. And more importantly, what they are supposed to be doing throughout their life. How they're supposed to be building the kingdom of God. He reigns now, forever and ever. And we are subjects of his kingdom, building it and extruding it onward and onward. Everywhere we touch is part of his kingdom. We bring it in subjugation to him. This happens very naturally, and it happens very easily once you understand that we're called not to be a part of the world. The separation becomes very quick. In fact, the world retreats from you everywhere you go when you step out in the kingdom of Christ. Again, back to the Doomer. This mentality comes from a misunderstanding of the book of the Revelation. People read the book of the Revelation and look at it, typically, as a series of events that must happen before Christ comes again. However, most of the events in the book of the Revelation are symbolic, and most of them are already happened, or are happening currently. What I mean by this are, we could take, for instance, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. We look at this and we go war and famine and pestilence, death. When did these things come about? When were they released? Well, at the Garden of Eden, when man sinned and fell. These things have plagued the earth ever since then. So why should we be looking specifically for the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse to show us that, oh yeah, the end time is coming, when we simply understand these things have always been with us? Sin has the natural consequence, the 4 horsemen. And this is throughout the book of Revelation. We see the same thing implemented again and again. We see that there is a symbology, and the symbology is of the world and the state that it's in, and the fact that the prayer forever has been, God, how long will you not judge the wicked? How long will you allow them to run rampant? There's all these things going on. The prayer of the saints have been this forever. And the point of the book of the Revelation is that God in his own time will judge the wicked once he has gathered all the souls to himself that he wants to. That is the message that's stated repeatedly. He's going to gather all those that are his to him, and then the judgment. And that's the blessed hope of the book of the Revelation, is that although all these things are happening, they're happening for the glory of God, so he may draw his elect together, and he may preserve them, and then have judgment. This is a great news for us. So as Christians, we should be striving to continually spread the word, and not just winning hearts to Christ, which the Holy Spirit does, we don't, but also we should be instructing in the way that people are to live so that God may be glorified even greater. If there's anything we can do, it is to glorify God. This was our purpose, our original creation. And so if you want to defeat the 4 horsemen released by the sin of Adam, you defeat them by returning to the initial purpose, glorifying God, doing what he's commanded. And this is one of the reasons why it's important to learn, read the Bible, and understand what it's talking about so you can properly glorify God. This is not the decision that gets you into heaven, but this is what you have to do, your purpose here on earth. If you've made it this far, congratulations. I'm genuinely impressed. If you haven't made it this far, that's typical. I expected you to fail at this point. Either way, I hope to see you in the next one. Maybe.